The topic we're looking at is latest strategies from the security front line. And I'll tell you what people are talking to me about, and maybe you can then take it from them. Obviously, the evolution of the hybrid workplace, the challenge to the old VPN defense around castles and moats has been challenged by that. There's moves towards a recognition of a zero trust model is the way for the future. I'm getting, that's one aspect that people are talking to me about. The other thing people are talking to me about is the complexity of the security tool set. So you've got massive, a myriad of tools to address particular issues, some with overlapping functionality. And the challenge of that is having observability over what's going on at any particular point of time. And the third thing that people are talking to me about is the wake-up call they got from the Log4j and the SolarWinds attacks that recognize that they're not just defending their internal systems, it's often the supply chain of software they have with other people in the systems that they're running. Those are three things that people are talking to me about, key issues that they're having to address. Is there any other areas that you would include?
Look, SUS area are definitely at the forefront of everybody's mind today, that's for sure. So zero trust, I think everybody's trying to go there. It's great in practice. It's great in theory. It's extremely hard to do when you have large environments that have been there for years and need a lot of change to get to a zero trust model. The complexity, I think, has been a topic for everyone, especially you mentioned the observability, which remind me of an organization I've been working with a long time ago, where they were paying a lot of money for really fancy solution. One of the best IPS. I remember when I started looking at it, they're like, oh, that's going to be fun. This is top of the top. And they had it in place for a few years, but nobody was looking at the logs. So the things was pretty much a brick doing nothing, but they was very secure because they paid the top money. So it's always a problem where observability need to be very well considered, and supply chain, especially for organizations like HSBC and large organizations like banks that have now really good security posture, we're less of a direct target, but a supply chain are, and that's where a key threat really is today. Like that's where we're seeing those attacks happening. It's more when they succeed there, it's because their supply chain are failing, and it's quite a difficult topic. It takes a lot of time and effort by our team to cover this.
Jean-Baptiste, can I just come in on that supply chain?
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking to me about this concept of SBOM, you know, the software bill of materials. So you start to understand how your software's built, component parts of it. Have you done any work in that area?
Well, we trying to.
Yeah.
It's very early stage. The problem with that approach is that it's extremely time consuming, as you can imagine. It's and when you're in an organization that has hundreds and thousands of softwares that you get from suppliers, it's quite a really difficult area. So I think what everybody is really hoping to see coming in the market, and as far as I'm aware, it's not there yet, but it's probably some solutions that are going to come soon, is solutions that can help you to do that.
Yeah.
Can you help you basically take a software, look what's inside, especially all the different components, because they come from, you know, different places. People using open source software, they're using things that get from GitHub repository, and being able to create all those links, analyze all those different sources and tell you, well, you might have a weak point here, and that might have an impact on that software you're using. I have seen some solution working quite well for your own software. So when you do your own development, I think the next step is to see the solution on third-party software that you can just apply them directly to a third party and it automatically do that for you. So hopefully that's something coming in the future. Okay. But it's very early stage of once this is a new concept. It's been very, I started to hear about this probably a few months ago, right? So it's quite novel in the industry, so it's still early.
I think you're right, and I think that's the feeling I'm getting from most people I'm talking to. It is early days, but I think there's a growing recognition that probably this is the Achilles heel of many organizations, their reliance on third-party software and not understanding the component parts of it that could be attacked in any attack like SolarWinds or Log4j. Can I get back to the discussion we had about, you were talking about zero trust? And you were saying that one of the challenges of zero trust, you said it's great in concept, but it's hard to implement. And I can imagine HSBC is a global organization with lots of employees, a very dynamic workforce that comes and goes. I mean, I can only see that this could be implemented, zero trust, with some close collaboration with HR. So you've got role definitions and access rights determined as people join an organization. Is that part of the complexity of implementing it?
It's part of the complexity. I would not say it's necessarily the most complex part. So having role, well-defined business profiles, etc. This is not something new in identity and access management. It's been there for a while. It's a difficult topic in itself, but a lot of organizations like us have been working on it for a while, so we're getting quite robust in this kind of things. Zero trust is not just what you can access. It's also everything that people cannot access, especially or how systems communicate between each other, right? And 10 years ago, when you were putting in place your capability, you might have role-based access from an identity perspective, but your network might have been fairly flat. You might have limited capability when it comes to the interaction of your OS with your software, or you might be fairly open. And with zero trust, we want to close that and reduce it a lot. So the approach that a lot of organizations are taking today, and it's probably the best approach, is everything new is zero trust. So because it's new, you can make the effort to define your role perfectly, to make sure it's well micro-segmented from a network perspective, making sure that the interaction with the OS is limited to the bare minimal, because you know what could look like. This has been defined over time, so now you know you can do it. So key challenge is all those systems that have been running for 10, 15 years, and the effort to migrating them has a cost, which and requires time, right? So that's where the risk continue to exist to some extent, and everyone has to look at each use case and say, is it worth for me investing, moving the system in the full zero trust and having really great security around it, or well, the system might continue to live for a couple of years. Do I accept my risk and keep it this way?
And I should imagine, Jean-Baptiste, that some of those systems are really mission critical systems for the bank that have been around a long time. So you, in many ways, tinker with them at your peril, really, because they work and they run the company. But don't you end up in a situation that you're almost half pregnant with zero trust? So you have to have a combination of the VPNs and you have to have a combination of zero trust tools.
Oh yeah, you will continue to live in a hybrid mode for quite a long time. At HSBC, I think every organization is mature, is trying to not be in that situation where system run and we don't want to touch them because they're running well. Because when you're in this situation, it means that there is no evolution anymore, there is no change. And the day you have a problem, you just know you will not be able to fix it. So continuous investment and evergreening is a very, very big topic everywhere these days. And a lot of the less mature organizations, that's where they probably struggle. Losing this concept that evergreening is absolutely essential, not just for security, for every aspect of technology. You need, even if it's working, you need to continue to invest in it, because the fact that it's working today might become a problem tomorrow where you do not have the resource, you don't have the knowledge to deal with it, and you just accept it. Or it's working, I don't want to touch it. No, you need to continue to invest in it to avoid future problems.
But that's arguing, Jean-Baptiste, that there's a life cycle with any product or any system,
Yes.
and you've got to look at it in that mindset and sort of say, how are we going to constantly evolve this? That can be challenging. And if I look at the economic climate right now, money's tight. I mean, people are going to have to question the argument of doing that. From a security perspective, I mean, you could sort of say, you know, the sky's falling in, there's a wolf at the door, and you could do that sort of stuff. But how do you engage stakeholders in a less emotional way so they can start to recognize these challenges?
Well, in a less emotional way, it's sometimes difficult.
Yes,
It's usually what works best, right? Scaring people
yes.
off. But it's also really to selling the concepts that we're in a world that changes all the time, right? I like to relate to the agile methodology. 20 years ago, we were not doing things in agile, we're doing things in waterfall. It was taking a very long time to do things, and everybody was complaining that technology was not able to adapt because every time there were change, technology was pulling beyond because I already did my plan 6 months ago. I'm not going to do a change today. Technology and not just technology, the overall way of managing projects have changed today. Most of people use Agile because there is a recognition that change is happening all the time. So when I need to engage with stakeholders that are reticent to invest for the future, I remind them that this investment is not necessarily just to protect the future, it's also to make sure they're able to continue to do changes. Yeah. Because if you're not able to put in place new security, this means when you have a new business need, we will not do it either, right? Because if you're not able to put the money where you're riskier, you will not be able to put it where your business need is either, especially in a financial organization where risk is forefront of everything. It's probably more of a challenge for organizations that are more less risk adverse, where they are more keen to invest on changing for say the business benefits, but not investing too much on risk prevention. But for financial institution, usually it's if you're not ready to invest to reduce your risk, well, you're not ready to invest to change your business. And this means that you're going to fall behind because the rest of the world is moving forward.
But what I'm hearing you say there, Jean-Baptiste, is you've got to frame your arguments in the language of the business. So for finance, risk aversion is something that resonates with people at the top of the organization. For other CISOs, they've got to look at what are the points, the touch points, and use that language when they're talking about the need to invest in things.
Yes, and then what's a business objective at the end of the day? Aligning your security approach to the business objective, to your organization objectives, is what's going to make it go forward, right? If the position is just we're here to protect data, well, it's great on principle, but this is not going to resonate much necessarily at the top. What is your business trying to do? If you're trying to grow your activity and to move from being a regional company to a global company, well, here you go. You're going to suddenly have a way larger customer base. So we'll have a larger expectation on how you deal with them. And any security event will become a really big problem for the organization. So it's easier to sell it as you're growing, you need to grow your security with it, because the impact of not doing it will actually make that you cannot achieve your business objectives.
Jean-Baptiste, can I go back to something you said earlier on? You were talking about having great tool sets, but the observability, you never get the time to look at the logs. There's two things that implies to me: an overconfidence in the security tool as a defense mechanism and not recognizing you need to constantly scrutinize what it's giving you. But it's also implying a lack of resources to be able to do that work because you're so focused elsewhere. How do you see this lack of observability? Is it a resourcing issue, or is it an overconfidence issue that gets in the way?
Well, I think there is. You can see both, right? It's usually not both at the same time. I have seen a number of organizations where the security awareness and the understanding of technology was not very advanced, and then there were an over reliability on the tool, thinking the tool does it all. Right? I have an anti-malware, it does it. I have an IPS, it does everything, and not realizing that it's not magic. You need people and resources to look after it. And to some extent, this is quite easy to fix. You fix the understanding at the top level, and then you will hopefully get the resource to put in place your monitoring. But yes, as you said, in a lot of organizations, the issue is different. They understand that there is a need for observability. There is just a lack of resources because budget is not there. And that is quite a big challenge. I think that's a challenge for everybody today. And that's where looking at what solution do you really need and what do you expect from them is very important. Investing in a very top of the line solution, very expensive, knowing that you're not going to have the resource to maintain it, there's no point there. Looking at solutions that might not be as strong, but have better capability, for example, to notify you when something happened, meaning that you have to be less proactive in managing it and supporting it, might be a better solution for you. It might not provide you with all the top of the line capabilities, but it will help you on your everyday management. And every time you take a decision when you invest, you need to look at not only what the functionalities you get out of the box, but also how they integrate in your model and in your resource. Are you going to be able to manage them?
Okay. I'm got a final question I've got, and then I want to introduce one of my colleagues who wants to a quick word with you. But my final question is the engagement with the stakeholders. We spoke about framing the arguments in the language that resonates with the business. But what about the cadence of that? And what are the stakeholders that you think you need to be interacting with frequently?
Ideally, everyone, all the time.
Yes. You're the one telling me about resources.
Yes, I know. Look, there's when you engage with your stakeholder, you need to go always top down and bottom up. So that is absolutely required. So bottom up, not only you will create your own awareness for your organization, hopefully raise your awareness, limit the risks that staff present to the organization, but making sure that people understand what the risk, the activities they do represent for the organization will help escalate that and hopefully raise the awareness at the top. And this needs to be a program, right? This is not something, oh, I'm going to do that once a year. It's not easy, but you need to have a program, a bit of a plan, and how you're going to do that is just basic awareness, security, hygiene that goes on a regular basis. At the top level and doing the top down, this is where you're going to work more on the actual engagement with the individual. So talking to the board, talking to the executive on a very regular manner is essential, but also understanding what they want to understand and what they actually need to understand. Every company is different. Some organizations are very security aware or very security interested. So you're going to get the executive or the board every time there is a breach somewhere happening outside. So they're going to ask what's happening there. Can that happen to us? What are we doing about it? They're usually easier to engage because they are getting some proactivity. So it's a question of making sure you maintain regular update with them, probably every quarter with the executive, at least every 6 months, no less than once a year with the board, providing them good updates on what you're doing, good visibility on how your control are performing, and what are the area where you're not doing so well. Right? Going to the board and saying everything's fine is probably a lie. because
Yeah.
if someone is able to tell me they have a security operations that is perfect, I want to work there.
Yes.
And if you're a board member and you're hearing, well, everything's fine and we're doing everything, just mean, well, what's the result is going to be? Either this person is really lying to me here, and they're going to not trust you, or they're going to say, well, we're obviously putting too much budget there, so we're going to cut the budget.
Yes. Yes.
So it's important to be transparent and say there are things that are not perfect, but this is what we're working on to sort them out.